You're listening to Transmission, expert analysis and insights into the latest trends and developments in the energy market from APA Group.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you this afternoon. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, traditional custodians of the land on which we are joined together today. First Nations people have taken care of our lands and waterways for the past 60,000 years, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. Walter Wriston, the long-serving CEO of Citibank, famously said, "Capital goes where it is welcome and stays where it is well treated." Late last month, APA announced a $500 million investment to address bottlenecks in our East Coast gas grid. This investment is critical for Australian businesses and consumers. It will help address the gaps in our projected supply shortfalls for our southern states later this decade. But the truth is, we should have pulled the trigger on this investment at least 12 months ago. And why the delay? Quite simply, we couldn't make such an investment when there was so much uncertainty from a policy perspective surrounding Australia's gas market. And why did we finally pull the trigger to make the investment? We made our investment off the back of the federal government's December 2025 gas market review final report, which provided clarity that our government will support and favour domestic gas supply to meet domestic demand. Our $500 million investment is not without risk. And that's okay. We always take risk. But like any investment, we need to ensure the runway lights are on so that when we take off, we have the line of sight about where we're heading and where we will land from a returns perspective. The gas market review final report turned the runway lights on to enable this critical investment. The final report also builds on the government's 2024 future gas strategy, recognising the critical role that gas plays in our economy, both for industry and as an essential part of the energy transition. It recognises the need to prioritise Australian gas for Australians via a domestic gas reservation scheme. And it highlights the need for regulatory reform to put downward pressure on gas prices and ensure energy security and energy independence for our country. And these are all positive signals for our industry. We all know that there isn't a perfect reservation solution that will satisfy every stakeholder. But at APA, we are optimistic that a well-designed East Coast gas reservation scheme can ensure we avoid a future domestic energy crisis and underpin a strong LNG export market for decades to come. In this context, there are three things I want to cover today. First, the evidence showing that domestic gas supply should not be a constraint to meet demand. Second, the importance of energy independence and the chaos created by the ongoing discussions about alternatives to a domestic solution. And third, what is needed to close out the gas market review to deliver reliable and affordable energy for Australian businesses and households. So let's start by laying out the facts about domestic gas supply. Over 71,000 petajoules of 2P reserves and 2C resources are available in Eastern Australia to serve an East Coast domestic market that consumes around 500 petajoules each year. And add to that around 1,000 petajoules a year for exported LNG. We have enough gas under our feet to deliver energy security and economic prosperity for Australians for the next 45 years. Victoria's energy basins are in decline. That is clear. But between Queensland and the Northern Territory, there is enough gas in the ground to support both our East Coast domestic market and our Asian LNG export customers for decades to come. Emerging new basins, such as the Beetaloo in the Northern Territory and the Taroom Trough in Queensland, can underpin our prosperity beyond the gas that's already being produced. We must ensure policy settings incentivise their development for the benefit of all Australians. You can see on the chart an example of what we're doing at APA to bring the new basins to life. These are our plans for the Beetaloo Basin. We are confident that gas can be delivered to southern markets cost effectively. And we expect the basin will also be a boon for Australia's LNG export market. Gas is essential for industry and increasingly critical in supporting the energy transition. The demand for gas in Australia is robust. Demand is not the issue. The debate is almost always about supply. And gas supply is not a constraint to supporting a healthy domestic market and LNG export market. We need the right incentives to produce it. And APA is leaning in to ensure that gas transportation and storage infrastructure is also not a constraint. Encouraged by the federal government's support for a domestic gas reservation, APA last month announced the next stage of our East Coast gas grid expansion plan. This expansion is all about addressing bottlenecks in our gas pipeline network to ensure we can transport domestic gas from Australia's northern supply basins to customers and consumers in our southern states. We'll be undertaking this work in two parts. Final investment decision has been reached on Stage 3A with an investment of $260 million to deliver 3 new compressors. And this will increase north to south capacity by 11%, including a 20% increase in capacity for northern gas into Victoria. And it will be ready by winter 2028. Compression is an incredibly efficient way to address bottlenecks and bring volume to market. They can be delivered quickly and cost effectively. They have been the solution that helped deliver 25% of additional capacity to our East Coast gas grid under stages 1 and 2 of our expansion program. We're also investing $220 million in Stage 3B to enable continued early works and procurement of long lead items for the Beetaloo Interlink. Final investment decision for 3B will be subject to conducive policy settings and further progress with the gas market review. Sensible policy and stable regulatory environments drive investment. And assuming the gas market review delivers the right framework for investment, APA will deliver the Beetaloo Interlink. Now, once stages 3A and 3B are complete, APA will have added approximately 30% of new capacity to north to south in the transport corridor. This will build on the 25% increase already delivered by APA over the last few years. So by 2029, we expect to have increased north to south transport capacity by more than 50% through an investment of around $1.5 billion. And this is an incredibly cost-effective transport solution driven by our ability to incrementally expand our network. Insofar the policy settings are conducive, APA will keep addressing future predicted bottlenecks in the 2030s by ongoing incremental investment in transport and storage infrastructure. When the policy signals are there to attract and welcome capital, the private sector can get on with delivering solutions without the need for market intervention. Now for topic 2, the consequences of a reliance on global markets for our energy supply. Now, everyone in this room is well aware of the very real impact the escalating conflict in the Middle East has had on global energy markets. And this is a stark reminder of the need for Australia to maintain its energy independence. Energy independence has played a critical role in shaping Australia's history and prosperity, and it must continue to be the hallmark of our future. Energy independence has kept Australia's industry alive. It has delivered low-cost energy for consumers, and it has driven gas to be one of Australia's largest export contributors. Almost 90% of the gas consumed domestically supports Australia's key industries. Our economy is dependent on us making the right choices as it relates to gas and gas policy. Keeping energy prices low is key, and security of supply is key. As evidenced on this chart, it's clear that imported LNG is significantly more expensive than domestic gas. Subsidies would be the only foreseeable way to substantially or sustainably deliver LNG imports at a lower cost than domestic gas. And any subsidy is ultimately borne by Australian taxpayers and consumers. Common sense should tell us that we should never rely on offshore markets for a product that sits right under our feet. This slide is an illustrative cost estimate for landed LNG imports into Victoria in winter 2025 relative to the cost of domestic gas. It takes the Asian spot price and adds the shipping, regasification, foreign exchange, and local transport costs that would be incurred if we were to import gas into Australia. And it doesn't take into account the uncertainty around supply routes, which has been on full display over the past few weeks. The outcome? An 83% higher average cost. And that was prior to the current conflict in the Middle East, which has sent LNG spot prices skyrocketing. So, fast forward to today. Landed domestic gas prices into Victoria averaged $8.99 a gigajoule during March this year. And that's in Australian dollars. Now, contrast this to spot LNG prices in Asia, which has averaged $11.82 US dollars a gigajoule over the past 2 years and rose to an average of over 20 US dollars a gigajoule over the past few weeks. And again, this is all before additional shipping, regasification, and foreign exchange costs that would be incurred to deliver the gas into Australia. You can see on this chart that Rystad's long-term forecasts also suggest out to the 2040s, it will remain roughly double that of domestic prices. And I've been advised that Rystad has updated these long-term forecasts today with LNG spot prices into Asia sustaining an even higher price out into the future. Quite simply, domestic gas gives Australia energy independence and delivers a significantly lower cost solution when compared to LNG imports. So it's quite obvious. And it begs the question, why am I standing here addressing the risk of dependency on an LNG import market? And the answer is uncertainty around potential support for LNG import terminals is putting the brakes on long-term supply contracts between gas producers and gas suppliers and gas customers. They are waiting in hope of a subsidy. And the market needs clarity that domestic gas supply is the solution we need to avoid we need to avoid a future energy crisis in Australia. We can't leave the door open for people to play games with our energy markets, with the hope they can profit from the inevitable market dislocation that will be created if we subsidise import terminals. It will create chaos, putting further pressure on energy affordability and sabotage Australia's energy independence. As a cautionary tale of what happens when you become beholden to LNG imports, it's worth looking at the UK. Britain has saddled its economy with some of the highest energy prices in the world due to low domestic gas storage capacity and the reliance on imported LNG for electricity generation. From an already high base, prices in the UK's gas market almost doubled in the days following the conflict in Iran. And this will inevitably flow through to their electricity prices in the coming months. We cannot afford this outcome in Australia. And it would be even more absurd given the abundance of gas right here under our feet. So let's bring our focus back to the domestic market. We know that an effective East Coast reservation policy will put downward pressure on gas prices. Committing to a gas reservation scheme that ensures sufficient gas is supplied into the domestic market will also help improve the investment environment for long-term infrastructure. And this is topic 3. In Western Australia, where a reservation has been in place since 2006, gas prices have averaged around $5.91 per gigajoule over the last 3 months. And the Victorian gas price has been $10.47 per gigajoule over the same period. And looking further back, gas prices in WA have been, on average, 50% lower than gas prices in Victoria over the past 5 years. Closing out the East Coast reservation scheme will be a significant step towards restoring the market confidence required for investment in gas infrastructure in Australia. But the potential for market intervention still clouds us. And an example is the proposed powers enabling Australia's energy market operator to underwrite gas supply options. Now, let me be clear, AEMO plays a critical role in our energy market, and they do a great job. But these proposed powers could discourage the long-term investment so desperately needed. Why? Because it's almost impossible to make long-term infrastructure investment when there's potential for intervention, where someone else can take control of your destiny. And would any of us in this room make an investment, such as buying a house, if you knew that someone else could intervene and impact the economics of that investment? Last year here at ADGO, I talked about progress with the future gas strategy. And there's been progress again this year with delivery of the Gas Market Review final report and consultation ongoing for delivery of an East Coast reservation scheme. And while we continue to move slowly, we are at least moving in the right direction. That said, we can't afford to reach what we think is the finish line only to be told we've got more laps to go. We need the federal government to close this out and close it out quickly. To conclude, domestic gas supply is not a constraint, and transportation of that supply is no longer a constraint. APA is delivering the required East Coast gas transport capacity to meet demand, and we will continue to expand in the future so that supply can always meet demand. When the policy signals are there to attract and welcome capital, the private sector can get on with what's needed. The last piece of this puzzle right now is the introduction of a well-designed domestic gas reservation so that Australia's domestic gas market can get back to what it does best, powering Australian homes and driving Australian industry. Thank you.
For more energy industry insights, please visit apa.com.au/transmission.